and welcome to exporTT's grant and funding webinar series. As Gavin correctly introduced me, my name is Nichole Rajkumar and I work at the Capacity Building Unit at exporTT. A little bit about the organization. exporTT's mission is to develop a sustainable and diversified export sector for Trinidad and Tobago. As the national export facilitation organization of the country, exporTT is charged with generating export growth and diversification in the non-energy goods and services sectors. It focuses on building internationally competitive firms, improving the business environment, and harnessing the differentiating factors that set Trinidad and Tobago exporters apart in the global marketplace. So with that said, before I move on, we wish to first of all thank the Couva Point Lisa's Chamber of Commerce for the opportunity to share this valuable information to businesses in Trinidad and Tobago. And I will now pass you on to the President, Mr. Mookish Ramsingh, who has a few opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nichole, moderator.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon again to everybody. As she said, my name is Mookish Ramsingh, just recently elected president of the Couva Point Lisa's Chamber of Commerce. I'd just like to give everybody a little background of myself, as I'm a new person to the presidency. I have served on the Couva Point Lisa's Chamber of Commerce for the last 9 years. So the last 3 years as first vice president, and has given the opportunity now to serve as president. In the past, though, one of the roles and functions of the chamber is to engage the membership and by a wider audience, the business community of the surrounding areas, to companies like exporTT and other organizations to bring forward information to help uplift businesses in the community. It is my great pleasure to continue this tradition, as this is our first webinar since the new board was installed in the chamber. And usually, as we all know, these things are called seminars, which are taken place at the chamber building or at a hall, and it's live and in person. Given the situation that we are in now, most of these things are done virtually. And usually when you're doing things virtually and somebody's speaking, you would see me. I would like to apologize. I should have done this at the beginning. My camera just malfunctioned. So it's like radio style now, you just hear my voice. So I do apologize for that. Anyway, going forward, the chamber would like to keep its roles and functions as to continue to bring valuable information to our members, the business community. Before this webinar took place, I had the opportunity to meet with a few people from exporTT and listen to what they had to offer. And it is with great relevance that the business community gets as much information from exporTT as possible. Given the climate in which business is now, you know, we just came out of looking at the budget, and after every budget, business people sit down and they look at it, and one of the main things they say is that the government, no matter who is there, speaks about diversification, and it doesn't actually happen. Sometimes we not only need to look at the government to diversify the economy, but we need to look at our own business in diversification. And I think this is where exporTT comes in. They can assist and guide businesses into venturing and diversifying their business. Especially, more importantly, getting into the export aspect of it, which is a very, very important aspect of business now, given what is taking place in Trinidad and Tobago, where we at a lack of foreign currency. And with the cost of food prices going up and imports going up, manufacturing at home and then looking to export is I would say, our only option at this point in time to alleviate some of the hardships that we are currently experiencing. I want to thank again Nichole and Jonathan for putting this together.
But I'd like to thank him for those words and also again for the opportunity to share this information. Our presenter today is Mr. Jonathan Seecharan, who is a business advisor with exporTT. Jonathan is responsible and has been responsible for a number of years for identifying and sourcing external funding that can support and enhance the company's strategic plan. He's also responsible for developing and coordinating the program financing services for exporTT to Trinidad and Tobago's exporters to enhance export. The purpose of these programs that he leads is to enhance export competitiveness and gain market access. He has previously served at the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs in the areas of monitoring and evaluation, as well as PSIP reporting and assisting in the development of policies. So with that introduction, I have the privilege of introducing you to our presenter, business advisor at exporTT, Mr. Jonathan Seecharan.
Thank you, Nichole, for that introduction. Good afternoon to all the participants. As Nichole would have said, my name is Jonathan. I am responsible for some of the funding facilities here at exporTT, the program financing facilities, of which today I would like to present to the participants so that you can have an idea of what we have to offer here at exporTT and how it can be incorporated and integrated into your thoughts and business planning. Without further ado, I'd just like to have a presentation here and I'd just like to share it. I hope everyone is able to see. Could you just indicate in the chat that you're seeing the presentation?
Yes, seeing Jonathan.
All right, great. Thanks, Gavin. All right, so let me go straight into it. So today's presentation would be based on exporTT's funding facilities. Just a bit about the funding facilities. Before I get into that, as Nichole would have explained, we are the National Export Facilitation Organization of Trinidad and Tobago, charged with generating growth and diversification in the non-energy goods and services sector. Again, our objective, as Nichole would have mentioned, is to develop a sustainable and diverse export sector for Trinidad and Tobago. So we come to the question of why to export, and this is a very interesting question, and Mr. Ramsingh would have alluded to it in his remarks, where we need to start to diversify. And the word diversification has been thrown about a lot, and in this context, diversification, we'll use it as, or we'll define it as broadening our non-energy export base. So why should we export? Why should we consider exporting? Well, I've just listed just 3 points here for consideration. One is the potential to be a net Forex earner as opposed to a net Forex spender. So you have that ability to earn foreign exchange from exporting. As we know, foreign exchange has become an issue over the years, or the access to foreign exchange has become an issue over the years. And one of the key buffers to getting back to easy accessibility of foreign exchange is to start exporting. So you can move from being considered a net Forex spender to a net Forex earner. A secondary reason that I have here that I've mentioned is increased market size. When you look at the size of the local market compared to the potential of the export markets, especially if you're if you considering entering large export markets such as the US, for example. I mean, Trinidad and Tobago has a population of roughly about 1.5 million, and you're looking at a market size in the US of about 350 million. So the potential in terms of market size is there to get your product or service into these markets, to generate some foreign exchange, to diversify your business. And that segues really nicely into the third point I have here, which is to diversify your business operation. Mr. Ramsingh would have spoke about diversification, not only at a macro level, but also from a company level, to diversify companies' operations so that they don't become as volatile and vulnerable to shocks to the local economy. What they will have is a buffer in the export markets for their business operations. We could use COVID as an example. Although COVID is considered a global pandemic, the rate at which different countries and economies are getting back into the groove of things, they happen at a different rate. So you don't want to be stuck in a situation or an economy where it is probably not accelerating the way you would like. So you'll have access to an export market who may be doing much more, a lot better, I would say, compared to some economies. So you'll hedge the company's risk to shocks in the local economy by diversifying the business operations into the export market or by exportation. All right, so that segues nicely into how can we help. Well, here at exporTT, we have 3 funding facilities. The funding facilities are designed to assist in 3 key areas. The first being export market entry, the second being innovation, and the third being production capacity. Each one of these 3 areas that we can assist in are covered under one of 3 funding facilities that we have. We have the co-financing facility, the research and development facility, and the grant fund facility. The co-financing facility deals with export market entry. The research and development facility deals with innovation, and the grant fund facility deals with production capacity. And we'll go into further detail on each one of these grants or funding facilities. Right? Before we get into the specifics of each of the funding facilities, who can benefit from these funding facilities? Well, simply put, companies that fall into the general category of being a non-energy manufacturer, of being in the non-energy manufacturing or services sector can benefit. I've listed, just for reference, a few industries or sectors that can be, where firms under these sectors can be considered. So you're looking at food and beverage, agro-processing, software development, creative industries, construction, general manufacturing, printing and packaging, and there's a host more. It stands to reason that companies whose main, I would say, core business activity involves importation will not be considered. However, I think it is important though that people who are engaged in, let's say, the retail sector, for example, have access to information like this, because as Mr. Ramsingh correctly said, and I think is a point that can't be harped on enough, is to diversify a company's business operations. So at least this information can get into the thinking of those who are in the retail sector to diversify the business and possibly get into exporting. So I think this information would be very, very valuable to those in those sectors as well. Right, so let's get into the co-financing facility. So what is the co-financing facility? As I said earlier, the co-financing facility is the facility that deals with assisting companies with export market entry activities, right? This support allows the company to allocate more resources to other areas, thus making them more efficient and having more opportunities to get into the export market itself. So what are the market entry activities covered under the co-financing facility? Well, there are 8. The first one being first-time website development and e-commerce platform integration for current and potential exporters. This is actually first on the list for a very specific reason. It goes without saying what has happened within the last 16 to 18 months with the COVID pandemic in Trinidad and Tobago. A lot of brick and mortar establishments were almost forced to have an online presence. And having an online presence in this day and age is crucial for success in business and in exports. What it allows you to do is to expand people's awareness of what you offer, of your company. You have a digital footprint. And I think this is extremely important given the context, the business climate that we're in due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is one way we can help with first-time website development or e-commerce platform integration. Secondly, we will have things like shipping of samples. Simply put, you may have network with a buyer. The buyer requests some samples. You'll be required to send some samples to possibly broker some deal with them to get an order. We can help with that. Product testing to meet market entry requirements is another big one. Each export market, depending on the particular item that you want to send to that export market, has certain requirements, and the product must be tested to ensure that they meet those requirements. This is crucially important to getting into any export markets. So this is another area in which we can assist. We have label design and modification. Again, you may want to enter a market that is a non-English speaking market. You'll have to get your labels for your products translated or have the necessary notations on those labels to meet those label requirements for those export markets. I'll just quickly run through the rest. Trade show participation, IP registration, which is crucially important. You don't want somebody in a foreign market copying your ID and stealing your IP. Translation of export-related documents, specifically if you're entering into a non-English speaking export market. And then we have product or company registration in an overseas market. So these 8 items or 8 activities are what are covered under the co-financing facility at this time. So what is the details of the co-financing facility? What is the limits that apply? What is the mechanism of payment? Well, in terms of the co-financing facility, the co-financing facility will provide support up to 50% of the cost of the market entry activities submitted for evaluation. So out of the 8, so 50% of the cost of any one of these 8 activities. So there are some limits that apply based on a company's size. So small companies have support up to a limit of 60,000 TT per fiscal year paid to a supplier. So whatever the 50% support that you get, that 50% support is paid directly to your supplier. For medium companies, the limit is 55,000 TT per fiscal year, and this is reimbursable, meaning that the company pays upfront and then they can get reimbursed up to 50% of the amount that they have applied for. Large companies, 50,000, same payment mechanism, reimbursable. Now, at this point, I would like to note a few things. One is that, and I will show it actually here, well, after this particular slide. In terms of eligibility, a company must be in operation for a minimum of 1 year. And operation in this context means not just registered for a minimum of 1 year, but engaged in business. So incurring some level of expense and accruing some level of revenue, right? For at least a minimum of 1 year, company must be locally owned. And in terms of products, if it is a manufacturing company, the product must be locally manufactured. The documents for submission to be considered: the company registration documents, at least 1 year financial statements, preferably audited. However, for this particular funding facility, management accounts will suffice. quotes and invoices for the co-financing service that you want evaluated. So any one of those 8 services that we mentioned before, activities we mentioned before, and a completed co-financing application form, which is downloadable from our website. Apart from these documents, there's an evaluation committee that looks at the co-financing facility and approves accordingly. They reserve the right to ask for further information should the need exist for further information. So let's talk about the process. How do you apply for the co-financing facility, and what is the steps involved? What are the steps involved? So the first thing is that you must submit all the documentation to the business advisor for funding. At this point in time, it is me, so you will submit all the necessary documents to the business advisor for funding. What the advisor will do is review those documents, and once there is no issue with those documents, once all are submitted, it then goes to the co-financing facility evaluation committee. If not, the applicant will be asked to make the changes and include the missing documents or additional information that they need to include, and then resubmit. Again, at that point, when everything is submitted, it goes to the evaluation committee to make a decision. At that point, the committee can ask for additional information for which the applicant will need to provide the information. Once all the information is provided, the committee either approves or does not approve. If the committee approves, a contract is signed, a contract is drafted and signed if approval is given, and then after the signing of the contract, once payment is made after that signing, disbursements or reimbursements will be made accordingly based on the particular payment mechanism. So there's one thing I'd like to mention here for the co-financing facility, and not so much mention, but sort of reiterate, is that the co-financing facility covers, and I'll just go back a couple slides, these 8. These are the 8 activities that is eligible under the co-financing facility. You can access multiple activities at the same time, or you could access one at a time. The only limit is your financial limit. So yes, for small companies, 60,000, medium companies, 55, large companies, 50, right? And these are per fiscal year, which runs from October 1st, 1 year to September 30th the following year. Right, so we'll move on to the research and development facility. So what is the research and development facility? Well, this is a facility intended to provide financial assistance to companies undertaking some sort of R&D activities to bring to market new and innovative products and services. The reason for this RDF is to stimulate and support investment and to use innovation as sort of a comparative advantage tool or competitive enhancement tool for suitable companies. So you could compete on, as you know, you can compete on price or on quality. If you have something that is innovative to the market, what this facility is saying is that you can use that innovation, that almost novelty, if you like, as an attractor for your product. So either you do something much more efficiently, or you bring a whole new product or service to the market entirely. Now, for this particular funding facility, there has to be a crucial element of innovation. And when we talk about innovation, we mean, or we define innovation as a new or improved product or process that differs significantly from previous iterations of similar products or processes. So it must have some level of difference from various iterations. Now, when we talk about innovation as well, there are 2 types of innovation that we look at. We look at either product innovation or process innovation. Product innovation is simply the introduction of a new or improved good or service. So you have an idea for a new product that when you look at the market, it has features that no similar type of product has, that you have never seen before, that isn't available on the market. That is sort of a product innovation. A process innovation, on the other hand, is just implementing a new or improved production or delivery approach. So you can think of it as the process of making a product or service. If there is some tweak to that process that is different, that makes it maybe more efficient in some regards, that is what falls under the broad category of a process innovation. Again, it all depends on the specifics of the project that you're submitting. It will be classified, or it should be able to be classified as either a product innovation or process innovation. Now, the RDF differs from the co-financing in that the RDF has 3 phases that you can access. Each phase has different funding limits and have different intentions. So phase 1, as you'll see here, is to establish the technical merits of feasibility and commercial potential of an undertaking of a project. In terms of the funding limit, it will be 70% up to a maximum of $100,000 TT over a 6-month period. What this phase 1 tries to establish or tries to answer is, can this undertaking be done? Should it be done? What is the viability of this undertaking or this project that you want to do? So those are the type of questions that you'll be asking under a phase 1 RDF project. So an example of a phase 1 RDF project would be like a market research or a feasibility study, right? Phase 2, however, is the actual product or service development phase, where the intention is to develop a working prototype or a minimum viable product of whatever the idea you have, right? So you want to, essentially, it's prototype development. So in terms of the funding limit for this is 50% up to a limit of 750,000 TT. What that simply means is that in order to max that 750,000 TT, you'll need to have a project of at least 1.5 million or above. Anything below that, the 50% would apply. Anything above that, the 750,000 limit would apply. Again, this is for technical developmental work. So it wouldn't cover anything such as like your salaries and wages, for example, but it will cover developmental work, specifically developmental work that is external to the company. It wouldn't cover internal costs or internal developmental work. So what that means is that if you need to do product testing for, let's say, a new snack or some innovative snack that you have, a random example such as that, you'll need to have your product tested. But if you don't have the in-house capability to test those products and you have to go to, let's say, a career, for example, you're looking at that as a technical developmental cost, and that is what will be evaluated, right? Points to note with phase 1 and phase 2 applications, they are open. You can apply for either phase 1 or phase 2. You don't have to apply for phase 1 and then phase 2. You can apply to either one. You can skip the phase 1 and apply for phase 2. We come here now to phase 3. Phase 3 is really a commercialization phase. What this essentially provides support to is marketing and launching the product, the new and innovative product or service that you would have developed in phase 2. The limit for this is 150,000 TT. And you would notice that this phase 3 is exclusive to phase 2 awardees. So whatever product, new and innovative product or service you would have developed in phase 2, you can now access after you finish developing your prototype of it. You can now have assistance or get assistance to commercialize it, market it, do some sort of launch so people will be aware of this product. With these 3 phases, you can see some sort of logical flow. So phase 1 is determining if you could do it. Phase 2 is not determining, but developing a prototype to show that yes, it can be done. And phase 3 is to launch and market that which you have done in phase 2. So that is the logical flow of the RDF in this as it is set up here. RDF applications are evaluated based on 10 areas. You would see here market research, management and technical experience, local content, business competence, impact of the project on the strategic direction of the business, commercial viability, degree of innovation, impact on the local economy, export potential, and applicability of R&D activities. In your application form, the applicant is required to speak explicitly to all 10 areas throughout the form. Right? Point to note, because this RDF deals specifically with innovation, you'd want to focus a lot of time and energy on making clear what innovation is being had in this project. Right? You'd want to focus on what the innovation of this undertaking that you want to do, what that innovation is. Right? Not to say you disregard the other 9 areas, but you want to make it abundantly clear what the innovation is. So what is the eligibility criteria to apply? Well, similarly to the co-financing, a business, you must be in operation for at least 1 year. And again, operation means that you're earning some revenue and you're incurring some level of expense. The RDF is open to sole proprietors, businesses, partnerships, companies, must be locally owned, must be from the non-energy manufacturing and services sector. And they must be able to show evidence to cover their client contribution of the cost. So very similar requirements to the co-financing facility. So what do you need to submit in order for a project you have in mind to be considered? Well, one, you need your company registration documents. Again, similar to the co-financing, your financial statements for at least 1 year, preferably audited. But again, in this case, management accounts will suffice. The quotes and invoices for works to be done, the completed RDF application form, and there is an attachment called a disbursement schedule, which you'll have to do, which breaks down your project into sub-phases, and any other documents required by the evaluating committee. And that comes into play usually after the application has gone to the committee and they have requested some feedback from the applicant for clarity on the project. So what is the process? So there are 5 steps that I've listed here. Again, step 1, you submit all the documentation to the business advisor for external funding. Again, similar to the co-financing facility. A review is done of the documents and to ensure that all the necessary documents are submitted to then take to the evaluation committee. If not, you'll be asked to rework and resubmit to take forward to the committee. It goes to the committee, a decision is made. And again, the committee can ask for supplemental information if they so need that information, and it will be incumbent on the applicant to provide that information. Step 4 is actually interesting because at the point where a decision is made, if approval is given, the contract is drafted, and then signing happens, and then after you go to step 5, you make your disbursements after you've paid after the contract is signed. However, if an application is denied, because we want to give people ample opportunity to make their case, the applicant will be informed of the reasons why the application was denied. And at that point, the applicant has a decision to make. They can choose to rework the application with the reasons that would have been submitted in mind and resubmitted, or they could choose not to. So there is, I would say, an extra opportunity here to rework at that late stage your application based on the direct comments of the committee, right? So before I go to the grant fund facility, as I was mentioning before, there are certain costs that will not be applicable for evaluation under the grant, the research and development facility. I would have mentioned internal costs and costs that doesn't fit within the realm of the definition of technical developmental costs. Another type of cost that won't be considered will be costs that you have already incurred undertaking a project prior to submitting an application. So any cost that you would have incurred before sending in the application, it will not be considered. It will only be the costs that are yet to be incurred for the technical developmental work will be considered. So I think that is an important distinction to make at this juncture. So moving on to the last of the funding facilities, which will be the grant fund facility. As we would have noted earlier at the start of the presentation, this focuses on production capacity. How it does that is it helps with the acquisition of new capital requirements, aka machinery and equipment. So it's really designed for the purchase of equipment and machinery to bolster your production capacity. It is actually administered by exporTT Limited. However, the applications go to the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and they handle the evaluation and approval. exporTT comes into play if approval is given. We draft the contract and we make the payments, and you'll see the process later on. The main aim of the grant fund facility is simply to bolster the production capacity of small and medium enterprises involved in the production of high value added goods and services. Right? Again, the reason they have to be either competing in the export market or they are producing a good that is considered an import substitute. So what is the financial limits on this? Well, a company can access up to a maximum of 250,000 TT dollars or 50% of the cost of acquisition. So to max that $250,000, you'll need to have equipment purchases of at least $500,000 a month. Anything less than that, a 50% limit would be applied if approved. There's an important distinction to make here as well, in that the grant fund facility does not cover working capital, land and building costs, or installation costs. So ensure that whatever piece of machinery that you're getting, you check with the local authorities to ensure, for example, TNTech, to ensure that your place, your factory wired properly, have all the necessary approvals before installing. So what are the areas under which companies could access the grant fund facilities? So there are 8 areas. So financial services, maritime services, aviation services, fish and fish processing, software design and application, creative industries, agriculture and agro-processing, and manufacturing. So these are the broad areas. On our website, you will see a link to the grant fund facility that further breaks this down into sub-sectors within each sector. So you'd see, for example, manufacturing, for example, will be broken down into like food and beverage, furniture, all these different sorts of sub-manufacturing sectors. Right, so what are the requirements to apply? Well, the requirements are a bit more extensive for the grant than it is for the co-financing facility or the RDF. There are several pieces of documents you need to submit. I will ask that you pay special attention to the audited financial statements for 2 years, because unlike the other 2, audited financial statements are mandatory when submitting for the application for this particular grant. So whereas the other 2 management accounts for 1 year could suffice, in this case, you'll need audited financial statements for at least 2 years. So who is eligible for applying for the grant fund facility? So similar to the grant fund, to the RDF, sorry, and the co-financing facility, sole proprietors, partnerships, and companies owned by Trinidad and Tobago nationals operating in Trinidad and Tobago are considered eligible. Again, the grant will be for the acquisition of machinery and equipment for companies that are either export oriented or export or producing an import substitute. It goes without saying that applicants will be required to meet at least 50% of the cost of the acquisition, because the minimum support, or I should say the maximum support that the grant fund facility can give is 50% up to that $250,000 limit, right? And similarly, whereas with the, well, not similarly, but whereas the co-financing facility and the RDF requires a business to be in operation for at least 1 year, the grant fund facility requires that a company be in operation for a minimum of 2 years. So what is the process for applying for the grant fund facility? Well, again, you start off with completing your form, submit the application and all the supporting documents, and the supporting documents would be these documents right here. And you submit that to the Ministry of Trade and Industry, as opposed to submitting it to exporTT. A site visit will be made, the proposal will be assessed, and the evaluation committee will make a decision. Notification will be given whether an application is approved or not approved. If an application is approved, a letter is sent to exporTT, and as I said earlier, we execute the contract and we make the disbursements to the successful applicant's supplier. So the amount similar to the RDF, and for small companies under the co-financing facility, the amounts supported under this particular grant will be paid directly to your supplier. Upon proof of you paying your percentage obligation, exporTT will make payment directly to the company's supplier, right? So it will say that here in the last line, effect payment by exporTT Limited directly to the supplier. So we've sort of reached the end of the presentation. If you'd like more information, there are links to each of the funding facilities that I have spoken about today, so we could get a bit more information. If you'd like to have a discussion, a further discussion on any of the co-financing facilities, how it can be integrated, or if support can be given based on what you're currently doing, or if you're looking to transition into getting into be an exporter of some kind, we could always sit and have a conversation virtually, of course. So you could reach out to me. That will be my contact information. And I will thank all the participants for their time and patience and listening to me throughout our presentation. I will hand you back over now to Nichole, who I believe will take it from there.
Thank you, Jonathan. So we'll move right into our question and answer session. And we had a question during the presentation. Someone asked, is there a special emphasis being given to SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises? And secondly, what is the criteria for being designated as an SME?
Right, so good question. For the co-financing facility and the grant fund facility, there are some limits, or I should start with the co-financing facility. Based on the company size, if you're a small or medium-sized enterprise, there are certain limits that would apply to you specifically. For the grant fund facility, you have to be considered an SME to apply for that. The Ministry of Trade and Industry uses the definition of any company making less than 15 million, that is 15, in turnover per year, is classified as a small, falling under that SME bracket. Specifically, I believe it would be between 8 and 15 million will be medium, and anything less than it will be considered small. And that is the definition we use here for designating companies under the co-financing facility with respect to their payment limits, as if they are small, medium, or large. I would say, however, the RDF doesn't have an emphasis on being small or medium or large. Any company, once you fit the general criteria, no matter your annual turnover, is applicable.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. We have another question. With respect, audited accounts are onerous for SMEs in business for a few years. Is there any facility to assist an SME in getting their management accounts completed?
At the moment, it doesn't have any funding facility that assists with getting companies' financials in order. With the, as I would have said, the co-financing facility and the RDF management accounts would suffice, so it doesn't have to be audited. You don't have to have that or incur that expense to have it audited, but you must at least have some management accounts. So that would be in-house accounts that you will have to prepare.
Okay, sorry about that. While we are waiting for some additional questions, actually, let me invite the floor. Is there anyone else who would, is there any other questions anybody would like to put to Jonathan? Okay, well, while we have that little bit of a lull, there's a question we often get here at the Grant Fund facility at exporTT, and it deals with website development. So it's basically, if you wish to redevelop or to expand your website, can you access the co-financing or any other fund facility? I don't know, Jonathan, if you want.
So with the first-time website development or e-commerce integration under the co-financing facility, it is exactly that, for first-time website development. So if you don't have a website and you want to have a website now, have a digital presence, you're moving from not having a website to having a website, then yes. However, if you do have an existing website and you want to add that e-commerce platform to it, that is also permissible under the co-financing facility. That would be the exception where you already have a website and you just want to add some sort of e-commerce integration. So yeah.
All right, we have another question here. It relates to the minister's pronouncements. I don't know if the person wants to elaborate on that, what the minister's pronouncements were that they're referring to. Will you change your requirement for what qualifies for an SME with respect to in light of the minister's pronouncements? They're saying, I can't remember her definition. She provided a definition.
Once the ministry, I guess, sends some sort of official communication, then we will change accordingly. But as of now, I don't have that information. So, but let me just say, all these funding facilities, they are reviewed and suggestions are taken, on board and presented to those who need to review these things. So we understand that, for example, the audited financials, we understood that would have been onerous for some people. So, we asked for management accounts instead of audited accounts for some of the funding facilities. So the changes will be welcome, I guess. As of now, no, nothing has changed as yet. I don't know if it will change, but if it does, we'll be sure to update and communicate effectively what those changes are.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any other questions someone would like to add? While we're waiting for anyone else who might wish to ask a question, Jonathan, I wonder if you might be able to just give a little overview again of just go through again the process for the RDF and co-financing facility.
Yeah,
just
sure,
a brief overview.
Yeah, no problem. Basically for both of them, you submit your documents. So the completed application form with the mandatory documents that you have to submit, it will be reviewed and it will be taken to the individual committees. The committees then make a decision. The only difference with at that stage is where with the RDF, if an application is denied, you get the opportunity to rework your application and send it back in. If the application is approved, you're on the co-financing side or the RDF side, contracts are drafted, signed, and then after you go ahead and make payments and then we disburse as accordingly.
Okay, I'm seeing we have a little question with respect to recording, if it will be available to the participants. Once our communication department has completed their editing, they will inform us as to how it will be disseminated. However, if you require the information discussed in this webinar, please free to contact either Jonathan or myself. Jonathan has given our contact information, and as well as we will provide the chamber with our information for them to send out to their members. We can provide that so they can contact us directly if you require the information shared in this webinar. Thank you for that question. Somebody's asking, saying they could ask a question by voice. I'm not seeing who that person is.
Just raise their hands and I could unmute them. So let's raise your hands
Okay.
so that identify yourself so that we can unmute you. Okay, that's Mr. Oliver. So I'm going to unmute him. Yes.
Thank you, Gavin. Mr. Oliver, you can go ahead with your question.
Good afternoon to the host and to all the participants. Yes, what I would like to find out is these grant fundings for SMEs, both small, medium, and large organizations, is it something that is readily taken up by various organizations, or is it something that needs to be, let's say, tailored so that more SMEs can get this sort of funding that you're already looking to provide them with?
We do have a lot of companies accessing the facilities. So the short answer is yes, a lot of people fit the criteria that we have. There are occasions where some companies may not fit the criteria, and usually from my experience, it has to do with financials. Some companies just don't have either the audited accounts or the management accounts. The issue is that at the moment, the audited accounts or the management accounts as necessary is needed. So there's no change to that. But most companies, yeah, access the facility.
Okay, thanks a lot.
No problem.
All right. Okay, Mr. Ramsingh has to leave in about 5 minutes, and but before you leave, Mr. Ramsingh, is there any question coming from the chamber as a whole that you'd like to put to Jonathan?
I don't know if you all will be able to hear me. I must apologize. My internet is.
We can hear you. We can hear you, Mr.
Okay.
Ramsingh.
Yeah, as like I told you, my internet is giving a lot of trouble here in and out. I don't know what's taking place. So sorry about that.
These things happen. Go ahead, Mr. Ramsingh.
I'm glad I'm back on, because I have a little more. I have a personal question though in regards to the website development. You mentioned that if you want to get into e-commerce, in the aspect of assisting, is it online? You have grant funding, but one of the main problems I see e-commerce people having is to set up e-payment platform on their site. Do you all assist with that?
No, that would be more on the vendor side of things, whoever is
Yeah.
integrated in the e-commerce platform. For you, that would be more on their side. What we deal with is just making the payments if you're approved. So that is a discussion you'll have to have with the vendor as opposed to us.
Mr. Ramsingh, does that answer your question?
Well, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for
We
that
have a
input.
raised hand from Sarala. Would you like to engage her?
Yes, yes.
Please.
Go ahead. Maybe you should unmute her, Gavin. Maybe she wants to speak.
Hi, afternoon.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Sarala.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Yes, it's Sarala Ramlogan of the Couva Point Research Chamber. Now, I know like small businesses, seeing the list of requirements could appear a little overwhelming. There was a point where we brought up site visits when it came, I believe it was the slides concerning grant funding. Is support available in terms of if you do a site visit and it's not up to scratch, or if advice is needed? Is that level of support also available?
So the thing is, I can't speak to, with respect to the grant fund facility, I can't speak to what exactly the persons involved in that look for specifically, but an evaluation is done and you do get some feedback. So I would assume at this point that that information will be passed on to you, indicating, you know, based on your facility, what works for the grant and what didn't work for the grant. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I assume that information will go to you. In terms of support, if, for example, let's say a facility isn't up to standard, they don't have certain standards, your production facility doesn't have certain standards, there are other facilities or other services at exporTT that aren't covered in this particular presentation that can speak to that.
Okay, great. So that definitely answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Ramlogan. We do have not a question, but an offer here from Mr. Amadas. He says he can assist with management accounts and audited accounts. if your business requires that in order to apply for the grant fund facility. So this was a great session, and I believe it went really well. And again, I'd like to invite you, if you have any other questions or any interest in the grant fund or any of the other facilities we offer at exporTT, please feel free to contact either myself or Jonathan or the organization as a whole. And with that said, unless there are any other questions, I think we can close off at this point. And I'd really like to thank the Couva Chamber for the opportunity to share this information. And I wish everybody a good afternoon, and Jonathan as well for your presentation. And I wish everyone a good afternoon. Thank you. Goodbye.